Hello, welcome to Dyson Design episode 13, should be. I'm joined as always by Mr. Max. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Nice for seeing you back after a little hiatus.
Yeah.
Is it 13? I thought it was 12th.
It's one of those numbers. It's 13. It's 13.
Oh man, lucky number.
This week we're going to be talking about challenge versus lethality, sort of going into the concept of different ways to introduce characters to challenge other than just killing them. Hey,
Hello,
Weird
Brian.
World War II. That's a difficult name.
Yeah.
And we've immediately broken the one rule on our stream by merely reading your name. Challenge versus lethality. I guess let's get into what exactly we mean by that, because we like starting with
Yeah.
defining our variables.
I want to say I brought the topic because and I'm not gonna be coy about it. Biggest Geekus was talking about Biggest Geekus was talking about challenging game yesterday, and that was an interesting topic. And I wanted to add my own 2 cents to the conversation. So I say, you know what, Tyler, we have this show. Let's talk about that. Let's bring back the topic and let's give us our view about that. And I like a challenging game. I like when a game is hard, and I like when you have to think. I like when you have to use your noggin to survive. But oftentimes that just means the game being deadly. And I want to say that what are ways that the game can be challenging other than just you get hit a few times and you die, right? So I wanted to talk about it a bit.
Yeah, and I definitely think that can be a draw, or rather the opposite of that, a turnoff for many players, especially if it takes ages to make a character in a game like Shadowrun 4th edition. Especially, it can take a really long time to build a character in that game, and it's also very lethal. So you spend lots of people look at it and go, well, why the hell am I going to spend an hour or more making a character when they can die in the first 5-minute combat that we have? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So yeah, I think it's important to, both as a game design on both the levels of running it and designing a game, to consider alternatives.
If the reason you try to care about not dying in the game, right? About your character not dying in the game, is because making a character takes so long. That's kind of like a flaw of the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's a very meta reason to care about staying alive, right? You just say
but
I don't want to go to the process again of making a character.
You'll see that as a selling point of especially a lot of OSR games, is that great, you drop a character in 5 minutes, you roll stats, pick a class, that's it. There you go. That way, you turn the corner or step on a pressure plate you didn't see because you failed a single check, and now your character's dead. Well, whatever. I'll just make another one real quick. And yeah, you're right. That is kind of flawed from the perspective of is that the right solution? Well, I think what we'd like to talk about more is not, let's solve that from the character designing point of view, and solve it more from the don't have the trap that you can't see that you step on and kills you instantly point of view. But how do we do that while still giving our players a challenge, right?
Yeah. Because okay, we can talk about lethality first, because obviously when we talk about challenging game, this is the big one that comes to mind. And like I said, I like a game that is deadly. I like a game that keeps you on your toes, that you don't want to rush straight into danger. Some people, but I think that's a matter of taste, because some people do like the power fantasy. But I think when you just go with that, in my view, you kind of lose some, because not everything can be, every problem that you face, combat is a solution, because you're built for combat, you're built to overcome combat and stuff like that. So it kind of, in my view, it kind of diminished the game. But I could see that somebody that is just really into combat could see it differently. But I like it to say that, you know what, let's try to avoid the fight if we can, because fighting is serious business, right? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and that can be, I think that can be like the multiple layers of failure there. Right, where maybe the first point of failure is you've gotten into combat when you didn't want to. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Games like lots of cyberpunk games, I think, treat it like that, right? If your group of four dudes triggers a security
Yep.
alarm and 100 security guards or military is coming after you now, combat is a how long can you delay it until you can get to a safe spot or evade them, not
Mm-hmm.
combat doesn't just end with you killing everyone, most likely, right? So there's layers to that, or there should be at least. And I think more people should consider that in other genres as well,
Yep.
right? Just because you don't have the internet, you don't have phones, doesn't mean people don't communicate, right? If if your answer to every solution is right, we're all combatants, we're all good at fighting. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we're good at. So we're gonna solve every problem with violence. Then that's going to speak to a certain reputation about your group, and maybe the failure there will be people start shooting on sight. People don't have conversations with you.
Yeah.
People,
You I think you said the magic word there when you said failure, because I think like if
Mm,
we talk about challenge, we kind of need to talk about like a win condition and fail condition or loss
mhm,
condition. And I think because of what we mean by challenging game is how hard it is to go from a fail condition, like to attain a win condition,
mm,
or easy you can fail basically.
mm,
And like you said, like, and I think very interesting that you say like maybe getting into combat in some game would be a failed state, a failed condition, right? If you could see that in a stealth game, like where you
yeah,
expected to go around undetected. If you fail at that, you get into a fight, which can lead to uh, being killed, being captured, being made prisoner, whatever, being maimed. But I think that's this interesting dynamic there that you, and it's almost like a narrative kind of thing that you have to that we have to develop.
yeah, exactly. Because the circumstances of combat usually aren't considered, right? How,
Hmm.
how, is your character I made a video on this a while ago, plug my own channel. Is your character just carrying around a big two-handed sword or a halberd everywhere they go? Or, well, think about again those modern settings. Everyone pretty much understands, yeah, if you're carrying around a light machine gun in something like Shadowrun, yeah, the cops are going to be all over you the instant they see you. Well, it kind of would have been the same thing if you're carrying a big two-handed military weapon around a town. It's so there's these other, before the combat even starts, there's these other things to think about, like how much attention are you drawing towards yourself? Is it even legal in that town to carry around the weapons that you're carrying? Are you wearing full plate harness 24/7 and clanking around? And
Hmm.
I think lots of games simultaneously don't show how good plate armor is at its ability to move around and stop wounds, but they also don't show how bad it is to just be wearing it on a
Yeah,
regular
it's draining.
basis. So, yeah, there's lots of the stuff before the combat even happens that I think
Mm.
doesn't get
And
thought about.
people were talking earlier about realism and like and verisimilitude.
Mm.
Maybe we're not gonna make like the distinction here, but like that's also something that if we eschew that too much in the game, yeah, then yeah, like you said, you're right. You're just like walking around like a fucking killer, like a murderer all the time, like a fully armed, fully
Yeah.
armor and stuff like that.
Well, and
And
because
there's no consideration of that.
and I'm sure you know this, you've worked in game design. Uh, Subconsciously, players
Hmm.
will find the quickest, easiest solution to problems. So if
Yeah,
the quickest, easiest solution to every problem is hit it, kill it
fight.
with fire, they're going
Hmm.
to do that. Just even if they're not trying to power game, just because that's generally the way the human brain is wired. Is why would I take this long roundabout path when I can just go straight towards it? And so if you're just throwing combat encounters at your players a lot of the time and you're not thinking about the groundedness or whatever you want to call it of the world, yeah, you'll run into expect to run into combat oriented characters.
Mm-hmm. So there's something that it's almost like from the get go, and like obviously we can talk about that in session zeros when we talk about the tone that we want to set. But it's almost like, you know, it's gonna be like a more like based like in reality kind of world, a more like realistic thing. If you go around fighting all the time, there's gonna be consequence to it. People are gonna look bad on you. You're gonna get injured. Injury took a long time to heal.
Yeah. That's what World War II here says. Make it more problematic than just the actual combat. Armor damage wounds don't just heal. Social and legal ramifications. Yeah, and those are all great points because I think part of the problem there is a lot of the time the resources that are spent in combat in especially modern systems are regained way too easily because you have your daily abilities. You have we'll just take a short rest and then we'll be back at full health and we're fine, even though we've just been stabbed 4 or 5 times. And
and also that's how you gain XP, in a way, like I know obviously it's like a kind of basic GMing that say, well, if you want to reward the XP to defeat the encounter, defeat it doesn't necessarily mean like killing all the monster. If you bypass it, if there's other way to defeat the encounter. You just like, but that comes to defining goal and presenting goals that are not just there's an ogre in your way, you have to kill it to keep going forward, right? Having other goals than just like I put a monster on your path and now you have to slay it, right? And I think that's a so you want like what would be like goals that we could put like that have a definite like win condition and fail condition. If you do that, you succeed. If you fail, this is gonna happen. That is not just your character die, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we can do what's often, I think people shy away from this in tabletop RPGs because they have a bad reputation in video games, but we can avoid a lot of the problems in a tabletop, which is the escort quest. You don't have to call it that, but the idea of somebody needs to get from point A to point B, or maybe you just need to defend that person's in a static emplacement, they're being attacked, and you need to defend this person. That I find works, especially in a lot of the modern, more higher power, high fantasy systems, where you can still have the characters be very powerful, high fantasy. So if you're having, if it's an issue with the game, like 5e might be, it's really hard to kill your players. Well, okay, it's not that hard to kill, Jim down at the but he's a very important character, and there are ways that we can avoid it, such as not having a binary failure state, right? Which is, in video games, people hate them because the NPC died, okay, restart the level and do everything you just did again.
Well, it's because in video game, you're going to restart, so it's a setback, you have to do again. But in TTRPG, you don't have such a thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think maybe that's also part of the question why it's so hard to define like failure state, because there's no such thing like, there's a game over, like go back to a previous save. You just keep going, and now it's like you've kind of failed, but you keep rolling with the ball, right? Unless you die, then it's over. That's when the game over is. So that's a clear failure state. But the other one are much more fluid. So you didn't accomplish all that you wanted. You know what I mean? Like maybe you had to escort those 3 people. One of them died. It's a partial failure.
Or maybe and this can be really interesting stuff that instead of just you lose, restart, which is part of why people hate escort quests, and the other technical issue of that move too damn slow.
But also slow, and then the AI or the NPC are stupid. They put themselves
the padding's
in danger.
Just trash, and we can avoid those problems, obviously.
Yes.
So I'll move on from that. But we can also have, really interesting stuff. Say something very basic. There's a prince that needs to be taken to an apothecary or something. Maybe the king's medicine man isn't capable of healing him. You fail. The kid ends up dying on the way there because you took too long. You took a wrong path. Stray arrow hit him. Whatever. Well, now maybe there's a war of succession, all because you failed that. So just totally, and you didn't have to really write that in. It's something that came from the game and players' actions and failures of itself. Sometimes you'll hear that called failing forward. Sure, but
well, it's because you fail, but like I said, like you keep going. Now you have to live with this failure. There's no save point. So now, like, how does the world evolve from that failure and impact from that failure?
Yeah, weird. Oh my gosh!
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah, time should always be some kind of aspect in an adventure. Yeah, it's one of the things I agree with Gary Gygax on, which is if you don't have a calendar, your adventure is meaningless. Which is it's actually
time
a good
should
bit of
always
advice.
be a factor.
Yeah. You shouldn't be Skyrimming it up here and walking over to the smithing anvil and just creating 8 million daggers and then no time passes.
And like we say, like the world is not on pause when the character is not around, right?
Yeah. And that can be another example of failure, right? Maybe the characters are explicitly putting themselves in safe situations where they won't die. And they think, oh, well, the threat is, the enemies are at the gates, but the gates are, 50 miles that way. We've got time. We can prepare. And then by the time, okay, now a week has passed, you are a little stronger. You are a little more prepared. But now they're here, right? They've, so not only are you fighting on your terms, they're fighting on their terms. And did you really want to fight a pitched battle here? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. So that's a thing to consider.
Yeah. Because okay, the rescue mission, like the escort mission can be one. Rescue mission, maybe somebody important got kidnapped. They're gonna be killed or stuff like that. That's a classic. This lady is gonna be sacrificed, whatever. You have to rescue her. So now you're on a time crunch. A failure state here is that you failed to rescue her on time. A lot of things with time can be a good, because oftentimes players get distracted and stuff like that. Keeping them on a time crunch. Somebody needs to get somewhere fast. An invasion is coming. You want to do stuff those can be failure state, but those are good example of fail condition that are not outright death, right? They're fail condition that you keep on going afterward, and now you have to live with this failure. But how do we make it challenging in a way that sounds fair, in a way that is not railroady? You know what I mean? How do you, because it's all those are kind of narrative. You can say oh, you need to bring, to your example of the prince, you need to bring the prince to this apothecary or healer or whatever in a week's time, or you're gonna die, right? Then you're gonna throw maybe it takes 8 days normally to get there, but then you're gonna throw ambush. How do you make it feel fair? How do you make it because we talk about challenge, challenging the players, challenging the character, right? How does it feel without? How does it feel that it's part of the narrative without you being adversarial in a sense?
I think it has to be. You definitely, the first thing that comes to mind is you absolutely have to reward player creativity. And if you've got if you say it'll take a week, you've only got a week to get there. The obvious one is, oh, we could ride faster, we could ride at night, we could shorten the distance in such a way, or you could have a player that's got some sort of medicinal skill, maybe some magic, depending on the setting, who can
buy them more time.
they can buy more time on the way there. There's a great I can't remember exactly who they were protecting in this way, but they my players actually failed to protect such an NPC, but one of the clerics had a spell that allowed you to preserve a body for lengths of time, so it could be resurrected easier at a later date. So there's that. So now it became, ah, crap, we failed. This guy's son got killed. He's gonna be pissed. Well, okay. New mission. We're gonna hide the fact that he ever died. We're gonna resurrect him in the next town over, and hopefully nobody ever hears of it, and that goes off without a hitch. So, and it sort of goes with like a lot of GMing in general, where think of like three possible ways that something can go down. That way, it's not just a full binary failure state. If you do it in
Yeah.
a week, great. If you don't do it in a week, well.
Yeah, but if you want to have like a more like a free form type of GMing too, like where you just like often say like you're there to bring problem to the player, to think of problem for the player and challenge for the player, not solution, right? That's their job to find solution.
Yeah.
There's the world, those things happen in the world, So that's what I'm wondering about the challenge. Like, how do we make like because I can see if you want to make like a challenging module, an adventure where it's very railroady and stuff like that. I can see that being done. That's not too easy. That's not too hard, right? There's some definite path that the player can choose between path A, B, or C. They maybe have some clue, but everything is like very well defined. So there's gonna be some level of challenge. Oh, you didn't get the key in this room before you went on this path, so now you have to take the long way around. You know what I mean? But to me, this is fucking boring, right? This is not why. This is like, if I want to play that kind of shit, I'm gonna play like a video game, right? That's not why I play. That's not why I get into role playing game. So, do you see what I'm coming up with there?
Yeah. I guess I'm not saying like a fixed. Think of three like fixed solutions
I know,
that are only the correct ones, but think of what just like people are likely to do in that situation to try and make it through. So that way you don't have to fully pull something out of your ass on the fly. You've already sort of at least mentally prepared for like, okay, I thought they might do that. All right, I've already got some ideas of how that's going to go, right? They might, instead of trying to take a long winding road, they might try to take a mountain path or whatever, and that might be a bit more difficult, but there's different things they can do about that. So I guess it's when you're being more free form like that, it is about adjudicating the difficulty on the fly, just as logic prevails, right? If if they say, all right, we're going to go through the heavily wooded area with foot trails by wagon, and it's like, okay, well, good luck. You're not, it's not. I wouldn't say it's an automatic failure, but you're going to start running into some problems very quickly. Things like that. So being able to adjudicate based on just logic, the logic of the situation, right? And having difficulties arrive as they make sense. So if you do have right a bandits that are going to ambush somebody halfway along the journey by road, but they don't end up taking that road, well then don't have the bandits all of a sudden ambush them on the other end of or if they end up showing up days early or days late, maybe those bandits have moved on, right? Because they aren't just sitting still like NPCs in a video game waiting there on the path. So you have to take an element of logic with it, and you have to know that your players are in general agreement with your logic.
But that also, like, we talk about how hostile the world is, in a sense, which again, like, kind of like push us back on the lethality side as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're in a world like and lethality doesn't only mean combat either. Like, if you're like in a world, it's post-apocalyptic, it's desert and stuff like that. Food and water is very rare. There's a challenge there that you always have to make sure that you have your ration, and stuff like that. That you have something to drink. Uh, that's a form of challenge. Is it fun though? Is it like
Yeah, and I would say that's a failing of most games to make the survival aspects interesting. Right? Because, usually it's I have a ration, lasts a
mhm.
day. I mark off a thing. I
Yeah.
don't have a ration. I roll a hunting skill. Oh, I hunt. I feed myself for a day,
Yeah.
and it's just an exercise in box
Well,
ticking.
you see that
And
that's
yeah,
Arun was
mm,
saying there. There's no way to roll better, so you can never really make challenge based on dice rolls. I think that's a very fair point. It has to be based on something the player has agency over, so that's a strategy, and that's something I often talk about. Role playing games, it's all about like making choices, right? It's
mm,
all about like player agency. If you some people say that player agency is the enemy of the whatever, but if you like why you would engage in such a hobby, because it's what it's all about. It's about making choice
mm,
and it being like, so you want to
yeah. In
and,
a
and
way that the players choose the difficulty, right?
yeah,
They can choose where the difficulty is.
and there's
If
always something about like pushing your luck or like
mm,
making it, like, are you gonna take the safe and
mm,
slow path, or are you gonna take the little more risk, right? That's so the challenge is almost like, yeah, like you said, determined by the player or by the character, by the action,
mm,
right? And the survival is the same thing, because you
mm,
just have like a ration, and then you mark one off.
yeah,
You don't have a ration anymore, you make your hunting skill, or you fail, now you start like going
yeah,
into inanition or whatever.
yeah,
That's no fun. But if there's something like, oh, okay, how much ration am I bringing over? And then you have to counterbalance with the
yeah.
encumbrance that you have.
Yeah,
And then
well,
you have to,
we're taking weeks of rations, so we're taking a wagon. Therefore, we're
yeah,
taking the main roads, right? And so
e-
it it
exactly.
it
Or we
bars
do
you
want to
off.
travel light, and
Yeah.
we're gonna cut across the desert, or
Mhm.
we're gonna, and then you get
Yeah.
delayed, or and then like, oh, there's somebody that can, maybe some extra reward we can go if we make this little
Mhm.
detour, or somebody we can help, but we're limited on food. We
Yeah.
cannot just, you have to make
Yeah.
to put those choice there to
Mhm.
make it interesting.
Yeah, and I think with that, with the failure adding challenge to it, there's often people, especially when you're getting into the issue of accidentally creating a railroad, if
Hmm.
there's only one goal, right? If there's only one goal, and you think, well, here's the player's starting point, here's the goal, and then, they can move. Well, again, players are going to move towards the shortest, easiest route. So they'll end up, if you only have one goal, they'll end up railroading themselves in a way, right? So, but if you offer, multiple goals, hey, we need you to go over to this town to, get something from it, whatever. But we're also going to pay you for surveying the landscape around here because we don't really know what's in the area. Something off the top of my head. You could think of better examples if you spend some time with it. But the idea of how much what's your money to risk
Hmm.
ratio that you're willing to put up with, right?
Yeah.
That's a very basic way of introducing more challenge. That's totally up to the player and the player character's choice.
Yeah, and the if you want to have the game challenging too, there should be like real consequences. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, like you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to pull the punch. You don't want to. So like, if you're running out of food, what does it do? Does it just do like well, you're just gonna have like a temporarily setback, a little
Mm-hmm.
minus on your roll, but then you sleep and it's gone. You're good.
Yeah.
Like that's well, we kind of put that on the back burner topic, but it's almost feel like we should bring it back. The death spiral kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
we say, maybe if we have time we talk about that, but now,
Yeah.
like, now that we talk about it, I almost feel like those two are much more interesting, intrinsically linked, right?
Yeah. Well, because there's when all of the other downsides in the game, either because of the way you're running the game or because of the game's mechanics or a combination of the two,
Hmm.
when all the other downsides are so, you take a -1, you take a -2, you take a little bit of damage here and there,
Yeah.
you're going to start looking at, well, dying is dying. Right? So eventually you get to the point where you kind of need to kick your players in the ass to get them to do something, right?
And
Otherwise, they'll things will get stagnant and boring, right?
do
And
you
that's
feel
not
like
necessarily, yeah.
do you feel like games where you're like fully operational until you're basically dead or at 0 hit point or
Mm.
whatever? Do you feel like those kind of push the player to fight to the death all the time? To
Yeah, if I would say in general, yeah. Although I think there is an aspect of still that knowledge that, yeah, you can fight at full capacity, but all they need to do is land, one or two more attacks on you and you're dead at this point. So it's uh there's sort of that salient, well, yeah, if I needed to make, a valiant last stand here and, pull something out of the fire, I could, but I would still rather not want to. But I think that depends on play group.
yeah, but there's also always like well, I might be dead in a round or two, but I'm also finish the fight in a round or two, right? Like the odds are the same. So
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, we can look to real life historical examples where people thought that and they both ended up dead at the end of the
yeah.
fight. So,
Well, that's also like
yeah.
I've rarely seen because oftentimes like in a historical in fight,
Mm.
you basically got killed, but there's a delay.
Yeah,
You're gonna
yeah,
die,
yeah.
but in a minute or so, right?
Uh-huh. And there's not that's something I'm trying to represent with the game I'm
Hmm.
designing is the most games don't have the if you try to push somebody into a corner and fight them to the death, they're gonna fight back way harder than if they
Hmm.
know, oh, okay, this guy might take me prisoner. I don't want to try to kill him because he's probably not going to try to kill me. So that fighting is very different to God, this guy's, I've stabbed this guy and now he's just going crazy. He's not running away. He's fighting
Well,
back even harder.
it's because oftentimes like the objective of fight is not to kill the other guy, right? It's to push him away, take
Yeah.
territory, defend your place, take his stuff. You know what I
Mm.
mean? There's
Yeah.
like the fight
Yeah.
is to achieve some other goal, but in
Yeah.
RPG
Yeah.
we
And
often forget that, right? Just like,
yeah,
oh, this
like
guy's there, he's
yeah,
gonna fight you, kill him.
like I
No,
said
it's
earlier,
rarely
the
the case.
context surrounding the fight is very often missing. I mean, go into
Hmm.
many, many D20 modules, OSR or otherwise, and drinking game, if you want liver failure by the end of the night, tell me how many times you see what is supposedly an intelligent creature, be it a human or whatever, that just says morale, they fight to the death
Yeah.
and it's over like 50 gold or something, or the fact that you were trespassing, or and am I saying you should never do that? No, because there's some insane people out there, but
Hmm.
like it's ridiculous. Or animals
Animal.
especially.
Yeah.
Animals do not fight to the death unless they have no other choice, really,
Yeah.
right? Like, but a million modules, or just watch an actual play and see how often somebody fights a wolf to the death. It's like, no, wolves are pack animals are very famous for running away at the sight of their prey fighting.
Hmm.
That's so
Yeah, they fight for a meal. They don't
yeah,
fight
yeah,
to,
exactly. Why
Yeah.
is a wolf even fighting you in the first place? Are you like dripping blood? Do you look like an easy target? Or if you're
Hmm.
a healthy person that's not carrying around a bunch of raw meat just hanging out of your back, why is a wolf like especially alone attack? Does it have rabies? So you've got to think about those things. Yeah.
That's just academics. They'll fight to the death over the most trivial thing. Unfortunately, like very few of them die, so they're bad at it. But
Hmm.
uh, but yeah. So that spiral, how do
Hmm.
you feel about them? You like some people like I say like, oh, they should be avoided and stuff like that. Are you?
I think sometimes I think there's the rare case where a death spiral can be like lead to either a pyrrhic victory where you've got one or two people left standing and it's like, all right, we've won, but look at the piles of bodies around us. At what cost? What are we even this might not even be the end of whatever our goal was. This is a step here. We're not going to be able to make it the rest of the way. What do we do now? And that can lead to some really interesting stuff.
Mhm.
Or you can just have the valiant last stand where one guy dies, you go, that's okay, we
Oh
can
wait,
make it without him, and then.
do we should we define what we mean by death
Yes, yes.
spiral? Like we usually like we tend to define our term. Death spiral. What we mean by death spiral is like once you start losing, it make it more likely that you keep on losing, right?
Yep.
It's games that oh, you get injured and now you get malus on your rolls, so now like you're more likely to get injured. So there's like a spiral building up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was that's what I was getting into is, the guy dies, but you're halfway on your journey. Do you want to take, a trip back to town to get, to recruit some other people with you? Or do you go, oh, we have 4 people, we can make it with 4 people, and then another person dies because you only had 4 people? And I think a lot of the people that hate Death Spiral are the people that want encounters to be balanced all the time. And they go, no, my next encounter was intended for 5, player characters of level 4, and now there's only 4 player characters of level 4. Oh no.
Yeah, I maybe there's that. I think there's also like people that that are still in the mindset of like everything is a fight, everything is like every encounter is going to be a combat, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. At some point, like, and I find it interesting that you're talking about like those more long tail that spiral, like those slower that spiral are over like days, over a journey, whatever, right? Oh, we're talking about like lacking ration at some point. Well, then if you get affected by like you don't have food, you don't have water, now you're
and you're
getting
thinking,
dizzy and stuff like that.
oh,
That
it's
would be
okay.
that would be at that spiral. It could be send you in the spiral for real.
And you think, oh, I'm a perfectly good hunter, I can do it, but maybe where you're at, there the food just isn't there to be hunted, something like that.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people like say like, well, that's stupid. No, I got like some injury and stuff like that, and now like the next fight, it's not even worth like. But I think that's interesting. Like, because it's not even worth like I'm gonna die in the next fight because now I cannot fight at my full capability.
Yeah,
but that's the point when you should say, well, you know what? When some other encounter happen, now you start thinking maybe we're not gonna go in with a fight. Maybe we're gonna find something else to do, right?
Yeah. We're only supposed to encounter 200 SU. No fair. Yeah, exactly. And that's that's sort of the thing is there's the saying when you're a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. Well, you almost have to train your players not to be hammers anymore, right? Maybe you're a screwdriver. Your main goal is to drive screws, but you can be used as a chisel or a wedge or a pry bar in a pinch. It's not optimal, but you can still do other things. And that's a part where game designers can kind of fail, where especially in class-based things, where the fighter, well, it's in the title. That's all they can do. So if they're not fighting, that player's sitting there at the table like, I don't know, I've got like, a couple of skills maybe that I can use here, there. Yeah. And,
and it goes back to what we're talking about, like setting up expectation for the game, like telling your player, if you try to get like into every encounter as if it's a fight, if it's a combat that you have to kill the people, it's not gonna last long, right? But and defining those other alternative field condition.
Yeah, and this is a good point. Death Spiral setting a timer is good, but when it's a forlorn conclusion, foregone, I think that takes away agency. I find that a little boring. Might as well roll a new character right away at that point. That's a great point because sometimes the mechanics do make it to where like basically you would need a 1 in 20 or 1 in 100 chance to actually accomplish anything here, and it's kind of like you can get put into situations where you're like, well, I was already in combat and I can't run because the guy blew half my leg off. He might as well have just killed me here. But it can also allow for that player and that character to choose their death, right? And, we have, instead of just dying sort of unceremoniously from their health reaching 0, it's like, well, all your numbers are really trash now. You are almost certainly going to die, but you can go out with a bang. You have some, maybe maybe the knowledge that you are going to die in a minute or so means well, yeah, okay, I am just going to fight to the death here, and my comrades can escape, while I defend this, because that's not something you see as much in RPGs as you do in other media, real life, occasionally, things like that. If you're playing a
Hmm.
modern game, maybe you're dead. You call in airstrike or artillery on your own position. That happens in real life from time to time. So I can see both sides of this.
Yeah, the I like that spiral, but I like them when there's a delay. It
Hmm.
should not be like on the first failure that you get that you're
Yeah.
on that spiral. You should be able to fail a few times, and there should be a delay, and it should be a gradual as well, because it's also a sign, like, oh, now things are starting to get really bad. Now it's time to think of another alternative, right? You start to think about if you're in a fight, running away, surrendering, stuff like that. If you're like in survival situation, well, now maybe it is time to I don't know, try to hunt,
Mhm.
or try to drink the water that you're not sure it's safe,
Mm.
or eat the dead body
Yeah.
that of your camera, right?
Yeah.
The it's kind of a signal that say, like, things are getting dire.
Mm.
Try something drastic, right?
Yeah. And like disease, I think, is a missed opportunity for that, actually. As Rune says, unless your goal is to RP dying of disease or whatever, but that sounds awful. Well, what if you do get, you get shot by an arrow because you get into a combat and you're like, whatever, it's just an arrow, I'll walk that off. And then, well, a week later, your arm starts turning a funny color and starts
Yep.
smelling. And now you're going, well, the apothecary's like, well, genius, since you decided to fight the guys instead of just go around them, it's either your arm or your life, and so now you could roleplay dying of disease if that guy decides he wants to go out that way, or just chance it with getting rid of it. But now, instead of dying from that, and maybe that's what won't rehash this too much because we talked about it already, but maybe that's what reaching 0 hit points means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that arrow didn't kill you immediately. Maybe that arrow that put you to 0 health or whatever the dying state is, well, it's a gangrenous arrow. Now you've got to choose, you can die if that's how you want to go out, or you could start playing a character missing an arm now.
So asking consent, like, I'm not going there. I'm kidding.
Well, it's
But
a hypothetical question, Max. Come on.
no, I'm kidding.
How would you feel if you didn't have breakfast this morning? No.
I did have breakfast. But how do you do that? That it sounds fair, right? Oh, you got shot by an arrow, and now you're getting like disease, you're getting infection, getting a gangrene. Does it need to be? Do you need to have a chart? Does it need to be in the system? Because if you just, like, as a GM, like, just make a, like, GM fiat, say, oh, the wounds you got get infected. Yes, you gotta make the game feel challenging, but in a way that is not fair. And I think when it starts feeling unfair, does it start feeling unfun?
Yeah, I think there's your mileage may vary on that one. Every different cop out answer as always, but every different group is going to have different tolerances for GM fiat, and importantly, different GMs are going to use their fiat very differently, right? I like some more crunch so that I'm not inflicting my own biases on, like, oh, that sounds like it'll be cool, and then I'll do that, right? Because then on an unrelated thing, you'll just end up doing a lot of the same things over and over again, just naturally, and you won't really realize it. Whereas having a chart or something, it sort of makes you break out of your bubble and go, oh, I wouldn't have thought of doing that. Yep, okay, that's what happens, at the cost of cutting into your the flow of gameplay a little bit. But I think that's something where if you played with your group for a long time, they should start to know, and you should start to see where they're okay with what kinds of fiat, things you're making up on the fly. Because in some tables, the GM's word is law, and the players they go along with that. So,
and there's some player also that they're gonna, in some style of play, that they're gonna inject those things themselves, right? Oh, the swoon, the swoon I got, it doesn't feel well. I think it's I like that, but it's a specific style of play.
Yeah, or maybe you have maybe you have them make, a save or whatever in your given game instead of a chart, that's okay, well, you need to make a save against this disease. If you fail it, okay, well, it started, depending on how much you fail it. I think that's another problem that the mechanics can solve, is not have, instead of having binary, oh, yep, you succeeded or you failed, either you don't die or you die. And you can see that in a lot of spell design, which is not good. The saver dies in lots of D20 systems, where it's just like, oh, you rolled too low, okay, you're dead now. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, the wizard cast shadow word, their power word death on you, and now you're dead. Oh, okay.
I still say make it like Traveler, a little make it like Traveler, a little character dies of disease during character creation.
Well, maybe, it's, I think it's more compelling if you have an old wizened character that maybe has a lot more skills, but they've started the game suffering from that disease. So, that can be another way of adding a secondary goal, right? You don't just have to take, you don't just have to get to this other town. But this companion, this character you're traveling with, he's now setting the timer, right? Because he's got, he's got to make it, on his whatever tuberculosis lungs, he's huffing the whole way, but you want to keep him around because he knows the journey better than any of you, or something like that.
But what I was about to say also about that is like in Traveler now, the dying character creation has been replaced by, you're gonna have a death, hospital death or
exactly.
stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's also can be like a fail condition in a way, like getting into death. And that's like to bring back to the, unless you have something else to add on character on Death Spiral. I think
that's
kind of
I think that's a good way to have GM fiat not totally be GM fiat. Also, things like debt, where the character takes on the debt, they know that that's something they need to pay back, but you as GM now have fiat as to when those debt collectors show up. They can show up at a more or less convenient time, because that's kind of how debt collectors work, right? So maybe, you won the combat you were just in, and now a guy's, kicking your apartment door in, trying to get all your stuff while you're bandaging up your arm, and you're like, damn it, I'm gonna have to give this guy the money he wants because I'm not in a position to fight him.
That's a character with a terminal disease would be a role-playing challenge. That's a very interesting, like Doc Holiday kind of vibe too. Yeah. But debt, and if you're like in a more medieval or if you're like more fantasy setting too, a debt can be like, oh, now you're gonna do this job for me, right? I save your life, but now you're gonna do this job for me. And this is something like I want to talk about as well. Like if we, like I said, unless you have something else to, if we wrap up the Death Spiral kind of like tangent, I guess. We might come back to it because like I said, now like I realize those things are very linked.
All of these topics are kind of, they go back and forth. So
how do we, because I talked a bit about before, like, oh, player always fighting to the death, right? And how do we train them? How do we encourage them not to do that? How do, like, to take L's that are not your dead, right? Like, because oftentimes, like, the characters player are gonna have their character fight to the death instead of like losing their magic item, or instead of like being made captive, or instead of running away, or letting someone else die. So maybe somebody they care about die. This happened, but now you can all die, or this person die and you live, right? Or sometimes even like letting the villain win. Sometimes you fight the big bad. You're trying to stop him from doing something. Well, maybe he won't succeed, and you can just say, well, you know what? We'll try to deal with the consequence later.
Yep.
But do you have the experience that it's hard to get player in that mindset?
I'm trying to think. I don't personally, but I'm pretty picky with my groups, I guess you could say, and so I might be an outlier here, right? For me, occasional, it's like a mark of a character that, they don't take losses, they fight to the death, and that's sort of their whole thing, right? Think troll slayers in Warhammer Fantasy. If they walk out of if they walk out of combat alive, that's almost a shame, right? They've taken an easy fight. But that's a rarity, right? And it's baked into the character. If you have player characters that are playing actual, human beings, regardless of what race they are, they're playing mortals.
They're playing people.
Yeah, they fear for their lives, right? At some extent, you fear for your life, or you at least fear for the consequences of being dead, right?
Or sometimes it's even looking at the bigger picture as well, like taking a L here.
Yeah, it's not the end of the
might mean we can like regroup and come back. Like you lose a battle, win the war. But now it's just going to fight every battle to the death. Well, then you die.
And I think part of this is, again, a problem with modules, where the way that modules have things done is you need to get this MacGuffin or it's impossible to kill the big bad. You have to fight the big bad here by this point or he becomes, immortal and impossible to kill. You have to, all of these sorts of things where once the time has passed, it becomes unsalvageable and it's just impossible to beat the module. And there's a very definite failure state for the adventure rather than just the character. And there's the meta knowledge of, well, if we don't succeed here in this combat, then we're going to be too late getting to the big bad. He's going to finish, whatever his plans are, and we'll lose the game. If I fight here and we manage to win this fight, but my character dies, oh, well, I'll just make a new character. So I think that becomes more of an issue with the way that adventures tend to be designed poorly by having a very, very strict win-loss state outside of the individual characters dying.
And do you think like Bleeker was talking earlier about what about player that thinks encounter must be fair for the level? I had a player insist that my encounter should always have a chance to be defeated or else it's not fair. Do you think like this modern mentality of like balance encounter and fairness and stuff like that also mean like, oh, you're more likely to fight to the death because you say, well, if there's a fight here, the GM put it here, it's probably like level appropriate, right?
Yeah. And then people, I agree with that. And then what happens is people start getting mad at the dice mechanic because they go, what the fuck? What are the odds of that? I find that happening to myself in like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, where the big focus was make it easy to balance encounters. And it's like, I'm sitting there looking at my D20 going, damn, another 7 in a row. What are the odds of that? I'm just because I'm not interested in the combat anymore. Because now it's just totally down to the statistical rolls of your dice because it's perfectly balanced. So what do you get when you have a perfectly balanced encounter with a linear randomization? You're playing an Excel spreadsheet, it's just not that interesting. So yeah, it leads to people not getting attached to the characters, not getting attached to invested in the fight. They get invested in the mechanics at that point. So,
There was another comment I wanted to address by Arn Man that he posted earlier about fights create challenge because the rules of process are understood by both player and GM. Other mechanics need to be established for non-combat situation in a way that failure is understood. And I think that's an interesting comment. I think maybe that's the crux of the problem. Maybe it's just because the rules are so designed or so focused on combat. And like I said, that's where we feel like we can put challenge that doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like I just threw your curveball out of nowhere, because now we have a set of rules that is understood. That is like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially because we see these the like pillars of role-playing designs being mentioned in the games, where it's like, yeah, we've got exploration and social encounters and combat, and it's like, and you read through the book and it's hundreds of pages of stuff that helps you kill stuff better, and then maybe a short paragraph on the hunting skill is used in such and such, and it's like, so no, you're really not touching on those other pillars, if we even want to not even to get into the pillars, but
but I like to talk about it a bit, because the topic being like making the game challenging in other way than just like being lethal, right? Like, so okay, challenging in combat, like okay, or maybe we include the lethal as well, but like making the game challenging for combat, we understand that it's easy to make the
Yeah,
game challenging to
yeah,
combat. How do you make the game challenging through exploration? Maybe the survival aspect kind of bit,
mm,
right?
yeah.
But again, that's often gonna be left to GM fiat. There's no real system, or some game do, but
No, yeah, and
many games they don't
yeah,
have many system
eh,
for.
at the
And the
end of
same
the
thing with a social encounter. How do
mm,
you make challenging social encounter?
yeah, that one I think is where it's simultaneously the easiest for people to improve on because it's maybe the most organic of them, and also the one that people do the most poorly
Mm-hmm.
generally because, well, either you just do what this character wants you to do, or you can make a diplomacy check, and if the number's high enough, then yeah, okay. Well, it's like, okay, well, again, it's sort of the thing of if I wanted that, I would just play a video game, right? Because we can do that in video
Yeah,
games.
exactly.
And
If it's
you
just
know,
left to a check, that's what was Arun was saying earlier. Like you
yeah,
can
yeah,
control
It-
a dice roll,
yeah.
but
So
you need to have some.
it's
Mm,
not really a challenge,
yeah.
but think, people make counter offers. People don't accept somebody offers you a job and you take the first even as simple as pay, they take the first. No, you negotiate back and forth. And does the person go, oh, you only rolled a 15 diplomacy, well, my offer stands? No, they'll maybe there's a degree of success in there, right? They
Mm-hmm.
go, okay, well, what's your counter offer? Let's bring this back and forth. You're negotiating over prisoners. You want the return of a prisoner, and your offer is, well, return me my prisoner or I kill you. They're probably going to go, okay, sure, try, dude. But if you instead start it with, we'll do a prisoner exchange, then they might be more warmed up to that, right? So I
Or
think again,
let's say
yeah,
you try to broker a peace between two tribe or whatever, two
mhm,
tribes that are
yeah,
fighting. Well, now okay, now we have a fail state there because if
mm,
you fail, the hostility is going to resume, right? Or maybe the war is going to start. You try to avoid it, right?
yeah,
But how do you make it challenging with just like having the side that you try to make them stubborn, right? Like
mm,
the representative of both sides, like that'd be like easy to make it challenging, but I don't think it'd be very interesting or very fun, right?
mm.
Eh, So how would you approach that kind of situation if you want to make a?
Hmm. Let's see. If you want to have characters be obstinate, well, I suppose there's a
It's not that I want the character to be obstinate. I want the social encounter be challenging.
but be challenging from the perspective of, okay,
It could be something else. I'm just saying like that would be like the
what
easy way
if,
to do it,
okay,
right?
well, we can look at why the tribes are warring.
No,
Oh, sweet.
thank you, Phil the Frill, for
Hey.
joining the Toonie Club.
um Again, we need to look at the context for why these tribes are in conflict. Maybe resources. What kind of resources are they? Is it like a deep cultural thing? Have they been, has one tribe been, taking prisoners of war and capturing people to work as slaves? What's the cultural differences? That's going to be a big rabbit hole, right? To get into, right? We don't know how to fix those in real life, so I don't know.
Yeah,
That's going to be a big challenge to do in a game. But if it's over resources, maybe we can have brokerages. You could set up, maybe you could, if your players want to go that route, maybe you could set up an arbitration, as many of the great nations used to do, and have an independent third party. They call in. They go, hey, instead of killing each other, let's ask these guys. Let's get a third opinion. Yeah, it sounds wrong because usually the
yeah.
second opinion, but let's get some more eyes on the thing. Are we acting crazy? Is one of us very clearly in the right or in the wrong? And maybe you become
But
enforcers for this new peace that you've brokered as part
but
of the deal.
oftentimes there's like no system to support that, and
Yeah, yeah.
that bring back to like that's what Armin say. He talked about we did a court case where the rules of how to win the case were established by the GM. So now you have a system that is pre-established. So maybe you can have like a challenging situation that does feel fair. It involves social situation to win support, hiring the right level litigant, etc. The rules were clear. Like the rules were clear. I think that's an important part as well. Like you can feel like oh, there's a challenge, there's something we try to accomplish. But now you're also like playing the system in a way, and that's also the topic I want to go.
Yeah.
Also, regarding that rules for those kind of, I made a video about the X Flower by I forgot the guy that did that. Those work well. Like it's if you go back in my video catalog, you can look at it. And HGPKit made a video about it as well, and I think it's a pay what you want on Drive-Thru, if I remember correctly. The X Flower by something Goblin. I forgot the name of the guy that the subreddit of the guy that made it. But for those kind of like social situation, the system can work well. But yeah, like playing the system in a way, because that's also something. And somebody was talking about that earlier about build. Do I have highlighted?
Oh yeah, somewhere.
Arun will say, especially if the goal is to make challenging gameplay, what your task is to make scenario that stress the player's gaming skill or, in the bad case, character build. And that's something I wanted to talk about as well, because there are some people that actually like the challenge of getting better at the game as a player, right? Learning the system and those character build, if you make like if you're in a group of min-maxer, right? And you have a GM that's gonna throw like very hard encounter at the player, and the min-maxer are there and try to find those builds that are gonna make their character very efficient. That'd be a challenging game. It wouldn't be my style, definitely not, But it's people playing the system, right? Trying to use the system and get the max out of it to find those combo and stuff like that. I can see some people liking that. It's not what I'm looking for in a role-playing game. But
if you and as many of you know, start the drinking game. Bring out your beverage of choice. The system I play most, Pathfinder First Edition, is tends to be. There's a bunch of builds. You look at Pathfinder First Edition, you don't have to scroll very far to see fighter build, mage build, whatever builds. The thing is, people always are focused on, specificity. Why would you build, this when this other character just gets bigger numbers in, archery or, it's ranged attack rolls? And it's like, well, because if you have someone running the world in a reasonable fashion, you're not. The moment your fighter who has the best, archery in the world runs into a situation where he cannot solve the problem with a bow, isn't he going to look stupid, right? It's so if you do have an issue with, builds or min-maxing and the like, there simply need to be problems that the min is going to show up, right? The only reason min-maxing works is if the min is never addressed.
Well, you also have you can also have like a party that is like a party composition, It's one thing when you have like one min-maxer in the party.
Yeah.
When you have a party of min-maxer that also min-max according to each other's strength and weaknesses, then it becomes like a different goal. But yeah, of course you can always like try to hit them. But then again, is that gonna feel fair as well? Like if they made all those those party that are super optimized to most situation, and you always hit them with the situation they don't expect.
Well,
they're gonna feel cheated, no?
Well, but let me put it this way. You make a character that is really good at grappling and the close combat maneuvers, and anytime they go against something human or roughly human size, they're probably going to win that fight. They build the character knowing that giant things like dragons are in the world. All of a sudden they run into a dragon. If that player's mad at the fact that their awesome wrestler can't like shin kick the dragon to death, that's kind of their fault, right? So it's I find play with adults is part of the answer, but the other
Hmm.
part of the answer is set up the expectations, right? If you're building a crack squad that is super specialized for this mission, there's no problem with that, right? That might be the premise. But if the premise is the world is big and fantastical and weird stuff can happen, and you hyper specialize in something, well, feel free to do that. But if you've decided to make a computer hacker and you're going into the middle of the desert with no signal, no service, that's I hope you have some other skills to make yourself useful, right?
Hmm.
Because even beyond the other characters filling the gaps, the players are just going to feel bored at a certain point. They're even if the characters aren't failing in the games, they're going to go, ooh, okay, I
Yeah.
wish I hadn't min maxed here because now I'm just sitting back, maybe making the occasional quip because
Hmm.
somebody else is doing all the work.
Yeah, but like when we talk about like having a challenging game, like
Mm,
because that's always a question. Like that brings back to the original question. How do we make the game feel challenging outside, like challenging in a narrative manner, right?
mm,
Outside of like, and yeah, we discussed some ways here, but like
mm,
oftentimes when there's no mechanics, does it just feel like, because you want the game to be challenging,
mm,
but you don't want to be the adversarial GM either, right? We because when
mm.
we left to with no system, it's always like, well, I can
Yeah,
always like
that's
bring
true.
back more people. I can always like make the Lord stupidly stubborn. I can always make so there's this thing there that was it Armin? Like with combat, at least it feel kind of fair because we
Yeah,
we know the
because you
rules.
have the mechanics backing it
Yeah.
up. It's one of the issues with, yeah. So I'm trying to think of games which mechanically, and this is actually one of the number one reasons I was designing my own system is because I
Hmm.
find there are not many, if any, games that do the survivalist, other things. And yeah, what Phil the Thrill here says is generally what we've been talking about is
Yeah.
hard mode should require out of the box thinking. Yeah, the trouble with that is now you're more reliant on GM fiat, which it's kind of difficult to talk about because it's different for every GM, right?
Well,
Um,
I think even if you like even when we say like combat, if combat is hard, right? Like it already puts you in out of the box thinking, because now you're saying, okay, how can we avoid this combat that is seem to be coming on the horizon, right?
hmm,
So already you're looking for an alternative solution to what is obvious in front of you. So I
hmm,
think that's fair. But even in
yeah.
but yeah, and we didn't talk about puzzle yet. But
Oh God,
we,
yeah. Um,
we talk about game that with system that does support. Like I talk a few times about Torchbearer, right?
mm,
It's one of my go-to game, for example, because it does something that I find quite interesting. Well, first, like Torchbearer is used. It's like if the Burning Wheel had an OSR in a way, like an old school game. So it uses like a scaled down version of the Burning Wheel, which I think is better because they fixed a lot of the issue with the
yeah.
Burning Wheel system. So you do have, but because it's Burning Wheel, you do have mechanics for social encounter, right? You do have like those basically like fight mechanics that you scripting. Oh, I'm gonna do a rebuke, and then I'm gonna do an argument, and I'm gonna do an insult,
Mm,
a dominant, whatever.
yeah.
You do have those mechanic for social combat. In so if you want to make it challenging,
Mm,
I guess you can. But you also have this mechanic which I find very interesting, where every time you make a roll, you have to mark a condition. Like I said, the first condition are gonna be like hungry and thirsty and tired and angry and sick,
mhm,
and then you're gonna go like to injured. At some point, it's gonna be like dead, right? So every time you make a roll, you're gonna have, and I think that makes the game inherently challenging, because
mhm,
now like you always have to think about a way to do stuff, to do the thing that you want to do, that is evident enough that it's not going to require you a roll, right?
mhm,
So Do you want to scale the cliff, or do you want to go around and take the time? Well, if you want to scale the cliff, you'll need to roll. If you want to go around, it's gonna take longer, and you may encounter other stuff on the road that's gonna require a roll as well. So there's always like, do you want to risk it, or you want?
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of challenge there that you force you to think outside the box, because now, like, yeah, that would be the obvious way to go around, to go about
Mm.
it. But now after that, I'm gonna be thirsty, and thirsty is no big deal, because then you can rest and drink some water and you're good. But if you have to roll again, then I'm gonna be tired, and now you're starting in the death spiral as well. So I think that's an interesting.
Mm.
I wouldn't say like it wouldn't be like my go-to game, because it's a very gamey game, right?
Mm.
But I think this mechanic is very interesting in the sense that it forces you to
Mm.
think about.
I think another way that you can do it is with the timeline in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Artman mentioned the court case earlier.
Yep.
Maybe you have, if you got a fixed DC or whatever, the number you need to hit or get below, or the number of hits you need to make, whatever your particular system uses. Maybe it starts very high. You've got a month to finish the court case to make your statement. You can spend that gives you time to go and gather evidence, to make your case, to do all of this sort of stuff, and that can start lowering the difficulty of the diplomacy check you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your efforts turn up kind of fruitless, but you've got a very good orator. You've got somebody who can kind of bullshit their way through the court. But maybe you are in that situation where you've min-maxed and everybody's dumped charisma, and so you are in the right, but the court doesn't look favorably upon you at all. And for all your skill, you're probably going to jail because it looks like you murdered this dude, not fought in self-defense. So, well, now you better you better go find some damning evidence at this point. Things like that, working around the solutions in different ways, that aren't just, what's the and that again can be, well, maybe we've already had combat. Maybe we've succeeded at the combat, but the combat itself was failure. We shouldn't have, we killed this dude, because he held us up for our money. And then it turns out, shit, that, the dude we thought was just some random bandit is actually the son of the Baron. And now we're, uh,
Yeah. Our man said another mechanic is sailing rules. Our ship was chased down by enemy ship, and it was obvious through the mechanics that we needed to prepare for a losing battle. And we ended up capturing the enemy ship and our song. It was challenging for sure.
Yeah.
But then again, we're back on challenging to combat, which, and I'm not saying that challenging to combat is wrong. Like, I like it. I think combat should be challenging and stuff like that, and you should have lost, and you should, know, like, I like when victories are not complete, right? Victory should always come at a cost, or not always, but like most of the time, victory should come at a cost, right? That's what makes it interesting. And then you have to have this moment where you say, like, well, was it really worth it in the end, right? But what we're trying to figure out is like other way to make the game feel challenging.
I think games that do games that are set in modern or future can do this well with some of the hacking mechanics, some of the those mechanics, though they can be clunky. But just the idea of a lot of the hacking mechanics, where it's like, yeah, you can have silent entry, you can scout the area around, hack the security camera, look through it, and all your plans go very well. And maybe you never get into combat because you planned out, the security guards' routes and stuff like that. I know you've totally avoided combat, but you risk, breaking a bunch of laws, obviously, and
But that's the thing too. You also, like, some system are challenging to use. That's not good, right?
That's the true challenge.
That's what we're talking about, because like this is like it's like you're challenging the player, because like try to fucking figure out those rules, right? That's nobody wants that, right? That's a badly designed game.
Yeah.
But like how do you feel like, or and also like, is it really at some point, if everything you try to do like feel like a slug, do you lose engagement from the player as well? Like,
Yeah.
is there a point when you're gonna push your player to have their character think, you know what, I should just fucking become a farmer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If combat is so awful and such a thing to be avoided,
Yeah.
eventually it comes to the point of like, why are we out here? I
And
almost,
even outside
you
of
know,
combat, like survival and stuff like that.
yeah,
Every time you
yeah.
go
Where it's like,
outside, like, oh, you almost fucking die. Oh man,
yeah,
you spend like 2 nights in the wood.
I've been,
Man, good luck
been
surviving that.
been fucking coughing, coughing up blood for 3 days, and almost got killed by a goblin. But and I got what 50 gold and some stale bread. Like, is it really worth it? Why is it? Yeah, yeah. You can run into those. It's again in a lot of modules where it's like, what the hell kind of person would go into this place given the rewards that you're getting in some of those like mega dungeons and death trap dungeons.
Mm.
So I mean that's a one way, sweeten the reward for it. That's one way to encourage people not to become the farmer. Uh Going back earlier, if the guy's in dead or if the guy has a terminal disease, it's better than dying. Maybe I get enough money to find a cure, or I get enough money to pay my debt off, and it's either the dungeon or the medieval mafia comes and breaks my legs.
Yeah.
So I think having characters start in a hole that they have to dig themselves out of is a really cool way, because if you have characters that don't start with issues going on in their lives, then it's kind of like, what are you playing like the gentleman adventurer?
Yeah.
And
That
you
it's
if
something
you're
I
playing
was talking with Bear the other day as well. Like, because on my character creation and on his as well, we both have something
mhm,
like a call to adventure, right?
mhm,
What is the thing that made you become an adventurer, right?
mhm.
I think those are important to think about.
Yeah, yeah, because uh it's women. I mean, maybe, that's, are you
Yeah.
uh if you're out there for the glory and the honor and
Well,
to make a name for
that's what we do
yourself, then
stuff, right?
yeah, yeah. um you know
Mm.
that's
I want to talk about puzzle. We
how
kind of have to.
okay. If we must.
That's often time like a way that people say like, oh man, no, I'm gonna put a challenge there for the player because that's really a challenge for the player.
Yeah.
There's gonna be this puzzle. They're in a room. The room is filling up with water, and they have to look at the wall for the symbol of a fish, an eagle, and a snake.
Yeah. And then oh man, there's so many problems. I find the issues with puzzles is the GM makes something that they think will be challenging, and
Mhm.
because puzzle problem solving falls into a lot of different categories, and some people are way better at solving some puzzles than others, it ends up not being hard at all for the players because their brains just work differently than
Yeah.
yours.
Or they make something that they think is gonna be easy, and because like
Yeah.
I was kind of like
Yeah.
riffing with the Skyrim puzzle there, or
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
oh no, the door is locked and there's
Yeah.
stone I can turn, but they're so like fucking retarded. Like, why do you even fucking put them in the game, right? Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It just
it's
slows
wasting
things
everybody's
down,
time. Exactly.
and they literally, that side tangent, they literally showed the answer to the puzzle at the E3 demos for
Yeah.
the game. So
Or it's also just like, oh, look at this. Like the solution is like always right there in your
yeah,
face, right? You just
yeah,
have to.
and
If you're not
yeah,
blind, you're gonna get it.
Phil the Thrill says again, yeah, the context is important. Why does the puzzle
Yeah.
exist in the first place? Is
Yeah.
it how many insane wizards have made dungeons in your world? Because that
Mhm.
answer started to get stale about 30 years ago and it's still going, right? Like,
Well, you could have also like puzzle that are like more organic, like the
yeah, yeah.
oh, you need to cross this river with a fox and like
Yeah, yeah,
rain, right?
yeah. But yeah, exactly that. They can start sounding like fucking nursery rhymes or like, kindergarten, math problems where it's like, it just takes you out of the situation. I I think, the best puzzles can be ones that, players have brought to themselves, okay, great, we for this you know, maybe we're going to avoid combat for now, but the enemy is, building up forces and we're going to have to
Yeah,
fight a bigger army later. But
we're
that's
building a
okay because
puzzle.
we've gone around recruiting people using our charismatic, our good wits and diplomacy skills. Now we have to get this army we've raised from point A to point B. That can be the puzzle. Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
and
just
that's
like, why would I hide my valuable behind solvable
yeah,
puzzle rather than magic locks
yeah.
and
No,
monsters?
my there's
Usually,
no
like, the answer to that is to test people. If you want to test somebody that is worthy or whatever, right? All right.
yeah, and then you have the room filling with water, and then the cleric or the wizard in your group goes, "Oh, I cast breathe water on the whole
Yeah.
party." So we've got 2 hours to figure out the answer, and you go, "Oh shit, well that puzzle didn't end up being hard at all." Or they go, "I take a pickaxe and pick through the wall," and you start the more they start interacting with the puzzle, the more where it's like, the wall is you
Yeah.
can't get through it, or you can't teleport out of it either, and you can't, and it's just like you have to come up with all these contrivances,
Mm,
and then eventually your players go, okay, well, there's no creative solution, so
exactly.
I
It's like
can't.
if you absolutely want your puzzle to survive
Yeah,
the creativity of the player, you have to
yeah.
make it like so restrictive, and then you're like, okay, you're gonna be trapped in that fucking room until you give me like the one answer I want,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
I
like I had
I
a,
I dislike that. Like, I
the
really hate
last
that.
time I did a puzzle, I did kind of a riff on it because we had an alchemist in the party, a guy that made bombs, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a puzzle that is the only thing it's blocking is like a normal masonry wall, and it took after about 5 minutes of them struggling with the answer, the alchemist just, dude, just plants a shaped charge on the wall and blows the wall out. And I was like, "Yep, that works." So I think if you're gonna have them have multiple solutions, or there they failed the puzzle,
Yeah.
but the only consequence was the people on the other side of the wall. It wasn't silent. Everybody on the other side of that knew they were
Yeah.
coming now. But
And if you want to, like, I find like the thing that are like the puzzle that are interesting is if you have to, if you have like a situation that you have to juggle multiple things at once, right? Like, we need to go to this place, but we also have to go to that place, and we can do both. We are on time crunch, and then we have like to make
Mhm.
please those people. Players have something to. If you create like interesting narrative, and if you're not on a fucking railroad, player will have something to engage themselves intellectually. Like, they have to find a solution. It is, in a sense, puzzling, because you say like, okay,
Mhm.
there's like those three things you want to do. We probably only can do two. Maybe if we like, maybe just one. Maybe if we really think hard enough, we can get 2.5 done, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But I think that's oh no, he's knocking the camera over. That's a bit rude.
Oh,
But I think there's this thing that just having like, oh, now you're in this room, and
yeah.
there's a red door and a green door and there's a symbol on the wall. Let's say, like, who the fuck care, right? Just like, I bash the door open, like you
Yeah.
said, it's like, and oh no, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Or God,
puzzle. I think that's the
riddles.
wrong way to try to challenge your player.
I think so too. I think if you're going to do puzzles, if
Yeah.
there's going to be a puzzle, it needs to have multiple correct solutions or no correct solution, depending on
Yeah.
the way you look at that. Um,
Maybe if you have a group that is like really into like fucking escape room and shit like that,
yeah, yeah, like or big fans of you can think of like the if you're doing like a spy thriller is the genre, and somebody gets
Yeah.
captured, and then you have to do a James Bond sort of escape, then sure, it can make sense, but make it organic, don't make it contrived,
Yeah. Because
think about yeah,
especially a hard puzzle, and that's also a thing. If you make the puzzle
mhm,
too hard, then you're
mhm,
gonna fucking like bug down
yeah,
the session. If you make it
yeah,
too easy, then why fucking bother?
yeah,
Finding the right balance is like almost
yeah,
impossible.
yeah,
I remember
well,
saying, if you make Secret Door, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you don't want, and that's also why don't have just like you don't want oh, if they fail to escort this NPC, then the world ends, or if they fail to get this MacGuffin, then the world ends. They fail to solve the puzzle in time. Don't have it be something like, oh, the whole party drowns, or the whole the game. It's just impossible to proceed past this point in the dungeon that they need to get to the end of for whatever reason. Or be ready to have them go, damn, this puzzle's hard. Guess we'll go to a different. They might just turn around and go somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe the puzzle just gives something optional, right?
Yeah,
It can absolutely be ignored and bypassed. Don't make it like an essential part of your path, right?
Yeah, exactly. And try to have it be, let the characters use their brains, right? If you've got knowledge skills, I think back to we're in an ancient cyclopean. I think back to what I know about Cyclops, about their culture, what this riddle could be. Throw them a bone if their character's smart, because their character might be smarter than they are.
Yeah. But also sometimes that if you just like leave it to dice roll, then it can also be like unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Our man was saying if you make secret doors very rare, then finding the solution to open it is a good opportunity for a puzzle. Too many secret door and it gets annoying. That I think that's I had something to say about that comment specifically. I added it, but now I lost my train of thought.
Well,
I lost my reply I had.
Maybe I'll jog it. The thing I immediately think of is the dreaded, elves have a 1 in 6 chance to detect secret doors within 30 feet of them from, original D&D. And it's just like, my God, dude, are you friggin', the DM's just sitting here, every time they walk by, oh, no, that was a 1. Oh, no, that was a 2. Oh, no, that, 6, and the more secret doors you have, the more, you're just having to roll constantly it's just dumb,
Yeah.
And then you lead, when even without that, it leads to your players, they find one secret door, and then if there aren't a ton everywhere, maybe they waste some time, feeling for the seams in the walls, and they find out, oh, okay, there's nothing else. But if they find one, and then they go, another 20 minutes, and they find another, well, get ready to have your players, for the next hour, describe the riveting content of them running their hand down the walls looking for seams.
Yeah. Brian was saying from a weird World War II. Was saying, I never liked puzzle. Why would anyone make anything allow a passage without a dedicated puzzle part, or just a game and a cheap event to try to make something different? It's silly. I tend to agree with that. I also find like they don't bring that much to the role play experience. In
and if
they bring people out of the mindset as well.
Yeah, they start immediately thinking as a person. And I've struggled with this where it's so frustrating if you've ever been in the situation where you as a person know the answer to the riddle, but you're playing a stupid character, or you're playing, you're playing a character that just wouldn't get the reference, or, whatever the riddle or whatever is trying to imply. So you're sitting there just going, does nobody else get the puzzle? I get it, but I'm not gonna break. I'm not gonna be the one to break character here.
And then you gotta give your fellow player that's a moron, but playing the smart guy.
Yeah.
I remember saying the point is secret door in the puzzle needs a puzzle and have a decent reward. I just remember what I wanted to say about the secret door and stuff like that. If you want to make it like part of an investigation, right? If you want to like you have to forecast it and people can take their time. Oh, there's gonna be this door. We don't know like how to open it. Maybe like door of Moria, right? And
and I had
that's a puzzle.
I had an interesting one a few sessions ago, I think, which wasn't necessarily a puzzle, but it was like a side thing, because the characters were tasked to deal with these rust monsters that have been eating away at the support beams of this place. And the rust monsters, they're not interested in the players because they came in not wearing any metal on them, so they were like, whatever. But there's a bunch of them surrounding a lance that is noticeably not rusted, in a big pile of just other stuff totally rusted to pieces. And so the players went, oh, well, that's weird. What's going on over there? And then, now there's a reason to go into the potentially dangerous area, whereas otherwise those monsters are just sitting there, having a meal.
Yeah. So, Armand say rule mechanics for investigation are required, and this seem to be ignored in most rule. It has bothered me for you. we need to do a show about investigation, like and doing like a kind of like noir session or like a team campaign, stuff like that. Investigative campaign.
Mm.
That's an interesting topic, I find.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's another one like I want to talk a little thing I want to touch about. Arun was saying earlier, in a video game, the players can die 6 times on a level before beating it. Not so much in TTRPG. We did talk a little bit about that, but because the main topic here is about challenge, I wanted to mention, like, I love challenging video game. If you look at the video game I play on this channel,
Yeah.
except for Mount and Blade, I'm often gonna play fucking games that I'm gonna die and die and die again. I play a fucking Hotline Miami. I play like those Dark Souls and stuff like that. I like those games that I hit your head against the wall like 50 times before you fucking defeat it.
But I find in a collaborative setting with multiple people that is way less enjoyable.
Exactly. It doesn't work.
Because actually you technically can do that if you just keep remaking characters over and over again, or if you just keep resurrecting if the cost of resurrection is just gold,
but it's also
then it just gets frustrating, right?
It's also in a video game. You can have like this path to success is much more narrow, right?
Yeah,
you have to make the jump at the right time. You have to press the right button. You have to avoid being hit.
Very clear. That you're not going to be able to do something outside the scope of the game's mechanic.
Exactly. You know that the path is there, right? It's just about like in a role-playing game, you don't have such a thing because like
there's no execution, right?
There's
in
no
a role-playing
there's
game,
no scope, there's no exactly. And also in a video game, it's gonna be like those challenging video game, they're gonna be about your skill, your manual dexterity, like the way you input the command and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In a role-playing game, you interface with dice roll, which you cannot control.
Yeah.
So do you have anything you want to add about making game challenging?
I thought this was an interesting thing. Which is I had a Star Wars DM that brought the board game Operation to a session. We had to play the game to solve a puzzle in the Star Wars game. I hated it, but I gave him credit for trying something new. That sounds pretty miserable, but I don't hate the idea of using something skill-based instead of totally random to resolve a situation.
Yeah.
But you have to...
I don't hate it, but it's like it's not where I'm at the table for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying something similar with the game I'm designing, but what you have to do is you have to represent a level of the character's intelligence and skill in how difficult the actual game is, right? In a game that uses Jenga Tower, Dread. Yeah, Dread. If your character was... What I would like to see in this sort of task resolution mechanic is if your character is very skilled at something, maybe the Jenga Tower is not very tall. If your character is very unskilled at something, maybe the Jenga Tower is like huge, and even someone really good at Jenga would have a damn hard time pulling that out from under there.
Isn't like a taller Jenga Tower easier?
Huh?
Isn't a taller Jenga Tower easier?
Well, maybe you have to pull from a certain spot on it. Like a taller Jenga tower that you had to pull from the bottom bit, that would probably be... I think that I'm not a physicist. Don't ask me to design this game.
Never played Jenga?
Well, it's been a while. I've never played Jenga with a non-standard size tower, as I'm suggesting. But things like that, you would need to, just as we add +1, -1, more dice to the pool. You can't just have Operation and that be it. You would need to have, you need to take out, 3 pieces. You need to take out 4 pieces. You need to take out 1. And I'm still not suggesting that's a great idea, but conceptually.
Because it really like gets you out of the character, right? It's really now you're challenging the player directly.
Yeah.
Which we're talking about challenge, always gonna bring back to that at some point. Yeah. I guess maybe that's the big point of tonight. Like, if you want to challenge the player, you can find like creative way to do it, or puzzle. If you want to challenge the character, you have to find narrative way to do it. And way that makes sense, so they don't feel like cheap.
Yeah.
Maybe having maybe some games are going to be more challenging because they have systems that support it, and otherwise having a game that is deadly in combat or in survival, it might also be the way to have the game be challenging. Or like
Mm.
we didn't talk about like sanity loss, like for a game like Call of
Mm.
Duty, but that's just the same as dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sanity
Yeah.
point or just an
So,
hit point.
reflavoring, yeah, I guess just shortly, reflavoring death as a
Yeah,
different way to lose control of your character permanently is it's the same thing,
yeah, it's
right?
the same thing. Yeah,
Um, but yeah, you need to consider the context of things and some pitfalls of making the game more challenging just by making it deadlier are that, well, you're going to create characters that just try to avoid combat
yeah,
all the time.
and
Maybe that's interesting, but
I guess also like the thing is always put in front of your player a few things that they want, but no way that they can get them all right.
mhm.
Maybe like you offer them like three things they want. Maybe they can only get one easily. Maybe two if they push, they won't really be able to get the third one.
Maybe they
Uh,
can get all three of them, but they're going to have to sacrifice something, that they
exactly.
already have.
Yeah, that'd be a good way.
Mm,
But yeah, but again, that's in GMing, adventuring design, stuff like that.
mhm. Yeah.
Like I think that was an interesting talk. I don't know if you had
Mhm.
anything else to add. I think we pretty much covered it
Mhm.
on my part.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yes.
we make those talk. We come like we have this topic we want to talk about. We don't necessarily have the answer. We make those talk
Mhm.
to kind of figure it out, and I think we did
Mhm.
that tonight in a big part. Like
Mhm.
I feel myself, and I hope the people watching feel the same way. That I'm probably a little bit better equipped about thinking about challenge in game than I was at the beginning of this talk. Uh, and I almost feel like maybe the challenge is mostly like is linked to lethality. Maybe that's the part of that we get a challenge,
Mhm.
and in the narrative sense. You have anything else to wrap up before we close the show?
Not necessarily.
What did
I
we learn?
would
What did we learn tonight? Let's
well,
make
I
the
learned that
the brief, the debriefing.
yeah, I learned mainly that the mechanics of games actively encourage either combat or boredom a lot of the time because of the lack of providing not just the lethality but of not providing interesting solutions to problems other than combat. Usually all of the interesting solutions are through combat, and that wasn't something I had really thought about until you'd mentioned, okay, well, what about not a GM fiat thing? What about not a narrative driven thing? What do the mechanics do to it? Because I can think of a lot of narrative driven ways that you can come up with other challenges other than
Yeah.
death. But you make a good point that, yeah, a lot of games don't handle, they only handle the very superficial aspects of the other things. So that's a challenge for game designers out there, I guess
Yep.
myself included, to find a way to make it not just I don't want to get into a fight, but not getting into a fight also leads me to something interesting. No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think for me, like like I think this thing that like what I would learn like lethality is probably mostly come from a fight because that's where most of the mechanics or challenge I guess is mostly gonna come from lethality because this is where most mechanic leads to, and also because it's the clear fail state, right? All the other
Mm.
fail state or like kind of soft fail because you keep on
Mhm.
playing, you keep on going, there's no load screen, stuff like that. So I think that's an interesting way of thinking about it as well. There's no like game over and we load and we reset.
Mhm.
You might not succeed in what you're trying to achieve, but you keep on going. So
Mhm.
it's not a definite end. I think the challenge otherwise should come from, if you want to make your game challenging, make it clear of how hostile the world is from the get-go. Because a lot of the challenge is going to come from this hostility to the world, or you're like in a post-apocalyptic desert where food is rare and everybody's trying to kill you for $1, right?
Mm.
Or you're in a more civilized time, right?
Mhm.
And train your people to accept L, your players to accept L. Oh, hello, Angar.
Hey.
Thank you for dropping by. We're wrapping up now,
Mm.
and try to train your player to not fight to the death at every fight.
Yeah. And I think inadvertently, with some of the comments we've had, consider what the laws are in your world, right? Because, along with not just things being more civilized culturally, but, that ends up with, you know, think about the modern day. Sometimes you may be in the right in self-defense, but you end up killing the guy. Well, you still got a court date. So
Yeah.
think about those things,
People
think
are
about the
talking about like
context.
using Twister
Context.
for mechanic resolution.
Those comments. Somebody patent that idea quick.
Yeah, yeah, that's gonna be like a success. Not with me, but
uh,
yeah. All right. What do we talk about next week? We didn't talk about that. Usually
yeah,
we
yeah.
try
What?
to.
Mm,
There's a topic I'd like to
mm,
bring how a game, a game book, teach you its system.
yeah,
You
I
want
was
to talk about
actually
that?
thinking. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think that every time I mention Shadowrun, so
Yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
spoilers. I'll mention Shadowrun a lot just for warning for
Yeah,
everybody because God,
yeah.
that
So
book does.
I think that's what we're going to talk about, like how, like the proper, if you're writing a book, or if you, or the
Mm,
way that the books are written, which one are good at teaching you the
mhm.
system, which one are bad, what's the proper way in our opinion to do it, to make it easy for you to learn the rules. I
Mm,
find like a lot of games like make it like much harder than it needs to be.
yeah,
Burning Wheel
yeah, yeah,
is one of them. So I think that's gonna be the topic for next week then.
yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
All right, close the show now.
Oh,
You're the
do
host
I have to
tonight.
do that?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh God. All right. Max, you got any solo videos coming up on your channel, or are you still busy with the move?
I'm still busy with the move
Mm.
for probably a week or two again. I'm gonna do my Sunday stream. I have like another Sunday stream that is called like a everybody streams on Sunday, but now a lot of people have stopped streaming on Sunday, so maybe I'm gonna change the name to the Everybody Stream on Sunday, because it's an open panel kind of show where
No.
everybody is welcome to join. So
Well,
I don't know. I'll see. But that's what I'm gonna do. What about you, Tyler? Anything coming up?
we've got a brief, break in the holiday season, so I hope to be able to make some videos soon. But I'm also, weatherproofing my very old house and doing a lot of work. So hopefully, I want to come out with a review on Pathfinder Second Edition. Now that's been out for a
Oh
while,
man. Yeah.
and I've got my thoughts pretty much solidified on that.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, look forward to that. I might make that tomorrow morning. Uh, Pretty short, some more variety content for the probably none of you that have been with me for since my channel started. I didn't start making tabletop RPG videos, and I'm not here for the big bucks, so I just make whatever content I want. So if you're into video games, martial arts, etc., look forward to some different videos on my channel. Well, I guess that being said, catch us again next week, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Do your other conversions wherever you live.
8 p.m. Eastern. Eastern is the only time that matters. 8 p.m. Eastern.
Whatever. And I guess we'll wrap up the stream there. See ya. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Well, we need to say thank you to everybody that joined us live. Thank you,
Yes.
Tyler, for joining me tonight. And thank you for everybody that are going to watch on the replay. And yeah, see you next week. And I'm going to end
And
the stream.
that's why he closes the streams. Bye.
Take care. Bye.